2006. And I share that with you to give you an idea of the different worlds of home inspections that I have experienced. So there have been lots of changes in the industry over time. And so this is what I have learned over the 17 years of doing inspections. And what this also is really what I like to use for home buyer seminars, to educate home buyers about what to expect when they're buying the house or when they're getting a home inspection and when they're planning on it, so they can have an idea while they're looking at houses as they go. So first thing is, and so use this for yourselves. Take notes, or I can send you a copy of this. This will also be on my YouTube channel tomorrow. But you can use this information so that you've got, you're able to explain this stuff to your clients. So if you're looking for other ways to manage your buyer's expectations, this is a good way to do it. So what is a home inspection? Pretty simple. It's a visual inspection of the house. It's going to be about 3 hours. And what happens is your buyer makes an offer. And I say it like this because I want to make sure I get really basic so that buyers understand, because I usually have a lot of buyers on for this too. Lasts about 3 hours. And usually after someone makes an offer on a house, within a couple of days, they've got to get that home inspection done, because you only usually have 3 to 10 days to get it done, depending on the property and your offer and the location. It could be that you have only 2 or 3 days to get this done. Home inspectors know that, so we plan for it. So we've got 6 inspectors, so we can actually just get things done very quickly. But sometimes you've got a few days, and that works, and that's what a lot of people need. So don't remind your clients they don't have to stress, because the home inspectors know that. This can save your buyers time and money, because it helps them decide if they want to move forward. It also helps them decide if the house is awesome enough for them to actually want to just keep moving. And our goal in educating them about the house is that they really know the house and can make that decision, like, yeah, this is a great house. It's in the same place we want it. We want it right here. We want to be here. Now, what do we do to make that happen? And we want to facilitate that, because we want them to know there's no such thing as a perfect house. We want them to get that. Don't hold out for the perfect house, because it's not going to appear. What's here is what's here, and you like a lot about it, so stay with it. Oh, I went off on my soapbox, sorry. Okay, so and it can save time and money, because people can find stuff out that needs to be handled, and in some cases negotiate it with the seller, and in some cases it's something that they just know that they need to budget to handle after they move in. It's different from an appraisal, and it shows you how a house operates, how everything works in the house, which is really important too for your buyers. So what's the difference between a home inspection and an appraisal? And it's really important when you're talking with your clients to not get these things confused, because it makes, like, they get confused. And I've heard people use the words interchangeably, appraisal and inspector or inspection. And we all know logically that they're not the same thing, but buyers don't. So when they hear the two things, it can confuse them. An appraisal identifies the dollar value of something. It's about the dollars, and it's for the bank, to protect the bank. The bank wants to know if it's the right amount for them to loan out. An inspection is about it is about the defects. So we are actually going in and saying everything that's wrong or not the way it's supposed to be about the house. It is all for benefit of the buyer. Dollars is appraisal, defect is inspections. Home inspection is not about upgrades or cosmetic improvements. So we're not going to put in the report that wallpaper is peeling. Age is not a defect in home inspections. Maybe that's why I'm drawn to home inspections. As I get older, I want to remind Remind folks, age is not a defect. Okay, so if the wallpaper is peeling, it's not going to be in the report. If there's a Harvest Gold refrigerator and it's still working, it's not going in the report. If it's keeping things cold or there are things in the freezer that are frozen, it's not going in the report. And your buyer can just plan to buy the fridge of their dreams after they move in and have this as their beer fridge. That's totally acceptable, but it's not going in the report if it works. And we're following clues to determine if something leads to what we think it might lead to. So if we see a stain on a ceiling, then we're going to, oh, here's a better one. Let's just go with this one. We see a stain in the corner of the basement wall, and we remember, and it looks like it's a water stain, and we remember that a downspout outside was discharging right against the house. We're kind of putting that together and then seeing maybe that's leaking, allowing the water to get in the house. When that happens, we're following the clues, but we can't drill holes in the drywall. Obviously, we can't pull out the drywall to see if our thought is correct. All we can do is detective work to make us guess what's happening and make educated guesses. So, what's important for your buyers to know about that is this is not their house. It's not their house yet. And while they think we are, some people think that we are godlike and that we have maintained this extra information. We've got this information that most people don't have. We don't. We're just following the clues. And that's what we want them to see. We're following the clues. And I had someone who called me once and said, Rachel, if I'm ever murdered, I want you to do the investigation. And I was like, wow, like that was a huge compliment. And she got that this was a creepy conversation, but she got that this was a big deal to just be an investigation rather than actual tearing things apart to find things. Just what can we find with what we can see? Houses don't need to be up to current code to sell. They have to meet the code of the time they were built or renovated. And bringing the code of the house up to current code would actually be an upgrade. And an upgrade is not what a home inspection is for. A home inspection is to identify the things that are not working the way they were supposed to, so that buyers can know that and plan for that. A code inspection is to make sure that things are meeting the code, the rules that were made up to handle certain situations and installations of components of a house. And what happens with code is a new law will pass about code. And here is new 2023 code. However, jurisdictions adopt code at different times because it's expensive to adopt a new set of codes. So Howard County, for instance, might actually be using 2021 code right now or 2019 code because they haven't adopted the new code yet, because then they've got to reprint everything. They've got to get everything changed. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? And I am so sorry I can't see your faces to get this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Peyton. So if there's a, and what that means also is a 1957 house is going to have different, that hasn't been updated, is going to have some different things in it than a 2022 or 23 house, which seems really logical to you because you've all been doing this long enough. I think only one of you is relatively new on here, one or two of you. So you've been doing this long enough to know that buyers are expecting things to be to current code. And when you go into a house, you know, I've done one with you, Kathy, you go into a house and it's an old house. They don't have the GFCI receptacles, the little buttons to push in the bathrooms and in the kitchen on the above the counters, because they don't have to, because the house, when the house was built, that wasn't code. And it's important for buyers to know that, so that when they bring in their cousin, uncle, friend, mom, sister, whoever, who is a licensed electrician, and they say, this isn't up to current code. I can't believe your agent or your home inspector didn't catch this and tell you about it. That's not what this inspection is for. What you do to find out about code and about permits, because that's really what your friend, cousin, whoever is talking about, is that we didn't notice that permits weren't pulled, you as the agent and we as the inspectors, and that this stuff isn't right. Doesn't have to meet current code, and the inspector and the agent are not required to pull permits or look at the permit history. Really requiring or reminding buyers that it's important for them to do their due diligence and look up the permits is a big deal. So reminding them to do that is something that I would recommend. Now it comes up on the home inspection where we might see that there are no stickers in a brand new electric panel with all completely gutted and redone interior of a house. And when the stickers go on the electrical inspector, the plumbing inspector, the use and occupancy, all of those stickers usually go on or around the electric panel when those things are done or completed, or as stages are completed. And so it's important when those get on there that when those are on there, because we can see them and they are a record of what's been happening with the house. Sometimes you'll see people, I saw a listing recently that was very excited about this fact that there was no, that they had pulled permits, and they advertised that in the listing. So just to give you an idea, it's not always something that happens. How do you get that information? The best way to do it is to Google building permits, Baltimore City, or building permits, Anne Arundel County, whatever it is, so that you can then just pull it up that way and then start digging and looking. And in some places, they say if the permits were actually closed using a final inspection, but in some places they don't, and you have to take a next step and call. Like in Baltimore City, you get that permits were pulled, they were opened and started, but not that there was a final inspection. So you request that bit of information from the city, and they get it to you very quickly. You just have to do it. So permits were pulled, were they actually completed and closed? Any questions about that? Okay. Another way to describe the home inspection and the home inspector is that we're generalists. We're like your primary care physician. So during the inspection, we identify things that are not working the way they're supposed to be. Just like a primary care physician might listen to your heart and go, oh my gosh, your heart sounds a little odd. I want you to see a cardiologist. We, as the home inspectors, say, hey, this plumbing seems to be working, but I don't think it's the way it's supposed to be. I'd like to have someone check this to make sure it's not going to be a problem in the future. And then you get a plumber out there. Okay. Then the next step is the plumber comes out and the plumber says, yeah, this is totally fine. Or whatever they say. But let's say in this situation, the plumber says, yeah, it's fine. It's really weird. I've never seen it like this, but it is okay. And then your buyer says, well, but the home inspector said blah, blah, blah. Then the buyer wants our reassurance that that's okay. 99% of the time, the specialist is going to trump the generalist. So the cardiologist trumps the primary care physician about the heart. The plumber trumps the home inspector in plumbing because we're not plumbers. They're plumbers. We have to be able to identify things that are wrong with all the systems in the house. And there are variations that may be a little funky that are acceptable. And so we want to make sure the buyers understand that and get it. That it's okay. It's not the end of the world. And it's great. Nothing has to be done, or this is what has to be done. Home inspection is also not a pass or fail. How many of you have had a buyer who says, what do I do if it fails? Well, You don't have to worry about that. It's not going to fail and it's not going to pass. We're going to get some information for you to make a decision about. And we're going to work through that together. Now, the lender may require some things. The lender may require that you install a handrail to the basement, or that this broken window have new glass put in it, or whatever it is. But for the home inspection itself, it doesn't pass or fail. And that's important to know. Now, I'm just going to show you, there are some grant things that have to be filled out in certain situations. So I'm going to show you, in case you haven't seen this. This is the HQS report, and this is for the DHCD grant that people get. And this goes along with a home inspection, and we're filling this out to give people an idea. I have it in here to give people an idea of what actually is required by the grant program, and not specifically this grant program, but I want you to see that there are different criteria. So on a home inspection, I'm looking to see if things are the way they're supposed to be. In this specific grant program, it's kitchen area present. Is there a kitchen? Yes, it's a pass. No, it's a fail. Okay, so we're starting with very basic stuff here. And just helping buyers understand that there are going to be things like this if they're getting a grant, that they're going to need to handle, and that you will guide them, and that the lender will guide them. This is not all on them. And we do these all the time with the home inspection so that people have this also for the lender, whatever is required. Any questions so far?
So if that kitchen did not have any appliances, would you still check, yes, there's a kitchen?
That is a great question. So no, because it has to have a working oven and a stove. So, and it also has to have a refrigerator. So it has to have a place to store food. So there are multiple questions here, and I know it's kind of small, but if those bits of information have to be there. And if there are windows, the windows have to have locks that work. So it's asking all these other questions. Yes, there's a kitchen. So is there a room specifically for it? And then all the other questions about it. And they ask this about each hallway, each bathroom, each staircase, and each room. Thank you, Sean, for asking.
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay. So what is your buyer's responsibility? Your buyer's responsibility is to be at the inspection for at least the last half hour of it, to find out what the inspector has found, to make a connection with the inspector. Now, that's going to be different in lots of cases. If you're working with someone who's overseas, if you're working for someone who's out of state, but they find the perfect house while they're on vacation and they want to make an offer and have the home inspection before they get back, and you're there representing them, that's fine. What I recommend is, and what we do all the time, because this habit started actually before the pandemic, because we do a lot of work with the military transitioning to Maryland, is do a FaceTime or a Zoom call or just a phone call. Something to get it so that the buyers can really feel confident that they know the inspector and can comfortably call them back to ask questions later. The big problem with not being at the inspection is you don't have the perspective of seeing the inspector's face when the inspector points something out or explains something. And so we really want to create that a little differently for people who can't be there. And we know, I mean, sometimes it just doesn't work. We've got 3 days or 5 days and I can't get daycare, or I can't get off work because whatever. And yes, you want them to be off work because this is a big deal, but we also know stuff happens. So have some connection with the inspector. Doesn't have to be face to face, but the responsibility is to make that work. Go ahead, Sean.
What if the buyer wants to be there?
That's the buyer. That's who I'm talking about here is the
Oh,
buyer.
I thought you meant us. Okay, my
Nope,
fault.
nope. Sorry. I am so sorry because I do this so many. And the last time I had a bunch of buyers on, and agents wanted me to do this again for buyers. So the buyer should, all of that, what I just said applies to the buyer. And
Gotcha.
And we want you to be there if you can for at least a little bit of it too. We always want to have someone at the property with us if possible. We want there to be an opportunity for you to ask questions if we see something and want to explain it. If there's something odd. And we do have Centra card access. So there are times that we just go and do the inspection and then send it to you and talk about it afterwards, which is also fine. Everything works. This is real estate. So as long as we stay within the letter of the law and everybody feels confident about the information they have, then it works. So the next thing is the buyer pays for the inspection before they leave from the inspection. So they do the inspection and then they pay and then they head out. They can pay online, they can pay in person, checks, credit card, cash, whatever. They don't have to do, and this is mostly for you, Sean, starting this new career. Buyers don't have to, the home inspection doesn't show up on the CD. So this isn't something that's going to be at the end. You're going to have to account for it. So if they wanted their parents to pay for it, that's fine. They can do that. This money that they use to pay for the home inspection does not have to be seasoned and then sourced.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I remember
Okay.
those words from my mortgage days.
I thought you might. So, and everybody who's been doing real estate for a while will remind you that if you get money from someone, you've got to be able to track it. And then the lender's going to want to track it back to that person's bank account and where they got it. It's all about how we want to not do money laundering. And they've just got to, all the lenders just have to check all their boxes. So this is something that's really simple. Anyone can pay for it. And I think it's great if someone's parents want to pay for their home inspection, or their friend does, or whatever. That's cool. Whatever it is, there are very few things that they have to pay for up front before settlement, and the home inspection is the home inspection and the earnest money deposit, and in some cases the appraisal are ones that have to be done before the inspection or before settlement. Sean?
Are the fees pretty much close to the same across the board with different home inspectors and companies, or do some buyers whine about how much you're charging versus something else they saw somewhere else?
That's a great question. Does anyone else want to answer this, or do you want me to answer it? And Marin's got lots of background in this. I know Paula and Kathy and Robert. Anyone want to respond to this? Because the prices are different all across the board. It's just like buying toilet paper at a store, where every store has a different price for different stuff. And yes, buyers complain, but most of the time they don't. Most of the time what I hear is agents wanting me to apply a discount so that their buyer feels special. Like the agent was able to negotiate a deal. Most of the time, buyers are okay with the price because they want to get what they want to get. And then there are other buyers. It's the same with every situation. There are some buyers who want the absolute cheapest because they're looking at the home inspection as a box to check, rather than as a crucial step that gives them the information to be able to live in this house confidently. They just don't get the difference. So you can help them balance that. And it's the same in a lot of cases where you get what you pay for. And there are some inspectors who will come in and spend 6 hours in a little house, a little townhouse, and will also not feel happy until they've made your client cry. There are and they quote code in their inspection. So they're already it's a different situation than you really want for your buyers. But if your buyers choose that inspector, it's important for you to be there to help mitigate that. the high intensity drama that comes in those situations. Then there are other inspectors who will do, I've seen inspectors who just walk in the front door, sit down at the table, and have someone else run upstairs and tell them, yell downstairs and tell them what's going on. And they just put it in the report. The way we do it is we get to the property when we do the outside, and we're out there for a little while, and then we're inside, and then we start usually in the kitchen, and then go down to the major mechanicals in the basement, and then up to the top floor, and then the attic as the last place, because we get dirty there. And our inspections take about 3 hours. And it's based on size. So pricing is based on size. There's one guy I know who used to do it based on the dollar amount of the house. And he found it wasn't working very well after he did it that way for several years. Because he just didn't do enough really big houses, expensive houses. So it's square footage is the most equitable across the state, because then we can do a 5,000 square foot house is a 5,000 square foot house. And a condo is a condo, a 1-bedroom condo, where the exterior isn't the responsibility of the buyer. It is different from a 5,000 square foot house or a 12,000 square foot house that a Raven is buying. So those are just different things to look at and think about. You also want, and I'm adding, go ahead, Sean.
Oh, I was just wondering about what the swing is from a small home appraisal cost to a monster house.
Yep. And you almost did that like it was a test. You used the word appraisal instead of inspection. So appraisals, I don't know about the cost on, but for the home inspection, about 400 to 600 is about a base. And it's everyone's a little bit different. What you want your buyers to be thinking about is what they can, if they have not, they're going to talk to somebody when they schedule it, or schedule it online. And when they schedule it, if they ask a question or leave a voicemail message and they don't get a response relatively quickly, it's important for them to be thinking about this relationship as what's going to happen then if later after the home inspection they have questions, or they feel like someone missed something. Are they going to get a call back? Are they going to feel comfortable asking questions about that later? Because a home inspection, I mean, we're all humans. So if there's a mistake made, we want them to feel confident coming back with that question. Paula, go ahead.
In relationship to, what you said, cheaper is not always better. I've never had an inspector from your company say anything like, I wouldn't buy this house, or this place needs to be demolished, or, sometimes I've heard so many horror stories from other people where they've lost deals due to the inspector, and I've never had that issue with you. So I just kind of wanted to bring that up when it comes to the cost, because I do tell people when they use you that you're very thorough. And you're going to get a lot of information, but then we can break that down.
Oh, I like that. Thank you. Thank you very much, Paula. And that is one of the things that my people all have to be trained on, is if they can actually communicate effectively and be friendly and professional and keep a poker face, basically, because that's super important. And we also this is one other thing that you should know about not putting things in order of importance. Yes, if there's a gas leak, that needs to be handled right away. And most of the time, there's not something like that. There are just things that need to be dealt with, or should be dealt with over the next year or so. And what we want people to be aware of is that it's not up to us, the home inspector, to decide what's important, because the buyer might have a relative, a friend who's an electrician or a plumber or a structural engineer who is actually going to solve whatever issue is that we might say needs to be handled right away. So we talk about those with the buyer. Now, if the buyer says, should I get this I don't know, should I get the hole in the roof fixed first, or should I fix the hole in the drywall in the kitchen first? I'm thinking probably the roof, because that's gonna cause damage faster. But if you've got someone who's gonna handle that, it becomes less of an issue. I did an inspection. I'm just gonna demonstrate that, give you a quick story on that. We did an inspection for someone, young woman buying a house. And she, as she was buying this house, we went in, turned on, or took the cover off the electric panel. And when we took the cover off, we found that the panel was actually really a dangerous place to be. And no electrical stuff in the house should be used while we were there. So we just calmly said, we're gonna close this up and just don't use the light switches, don't turn anything on. And we're gonna recommend that you engage a licensed electrician to come and evaluate this and then make whatever repairs are necessary. And she said, oh, that's fine. My dad's a master electrician. He's getting us a new panel and stuff for our wedding. So no big deal. So that was it. And for me, that would have been something that needed to be handled right away. And her dad was going to handle this right away. But that's why we don't prioritize and put some things there. And the other thing is, some people can live with things longer. And I could live with things differently when I was 20 than I could live with them now at 50. There are things that I can tolerate. And I also did an inspection for someone who the house didn't have enough problems. They wanted a house with lots of stuff wrong with it so that they could be projects for their daughter to have to do. She was in recovery and needed projects. So they needed a house with projects. So everybody's got something different. And a home inspector should never say that something is mold without having tested it and having a report in front of them to be able to say that. And they should never give their opinion on what should happen, if you should buy or sell, or buy or not buy, or tear it down. Okay, so another responsibility of the buyer is to read the report and know what's in there and ask questions. So if you've got someone who's nervous about asking questions, and I've had it also where the mom or dad calls me and says, why did this happen? How does this work? This doesn't make sense, after they've moved into the house. The buyer's got to get this stuff. And this is one that I am happy to work with them as they are learning to stand up for themselves. With some first-time buyers who are really young, just don't know how to stand up for themselves and ask the questions they need to ask, and that's fine. We want them to know what's happening with the house, because we want them to move in empowered and educated, not just surprised to find out that there's no such thing as a perfect house. This is just a reminder. And we like to tell people that because you tell people that, because it's the truth. And we want people to get in the house and not be surprised. And there's only two types of houses. There are ones that have problems. And the other type of houses are ones that are going to have problems. So houses have problems and they're going to have problems. And that's it. So your buyers should know that there's no such thing as a perfect house, and there's only two types of houses, ones that have problems, ones that are going to have problems. Now, you may hear that as, okay, so there's going to be stuff wrong with every house. That's it. That's exactly it. And what that means for a first-time home buyer is that they get to decide how the repairs get handled and how quickly. And they don't have to wait for a landlord to figure that out. What that means for someone who is buying for their second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th time is they're just reminded. You're reminding them about home ownership. Maybe it's someone who sold their house a couple of years ago and they've been renting, and now they're getting ready to buy again, and they've forgotten that there's no such thing as a perfect house. You're just reminding them. And it's all basic. This is not stuff that people don't know. They just aren't aware of it. Like, they haven't thought about it. I've had buyers actually think I can see behind walls, like that I actually have X-ray vision. So I remind them at the beginning of the inspection, I don't have X-ray vision, and I have two sons. So I certainly could have used it when they were younger. So those are just things to think about. My dad taught me to be a home inspector, and he always said, I only have x-ray vision on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. And today's Monday, so sorry I don't have x-ray vision. It's silly, but it's stuck in people's mind. So, and when you think of things like that, and then remember to say them every time, because you've got to say them every time, no matter what, just as a reminder, so that you don't get into a fair housing kind of situation where someone says, you didn't tell me that. I tell everybody that. And that's what we're always thinking, making sure that you always can say it, and that you know that you're always saying those things. So one thing that buyers can get from being able to know that they're going to have a house with problems or houses that are going to have problems is that they can reduce the potential for some of those problems by doing some maintenance. So one of those things is cleaning out gutters. I did an inspection for someone, $800,000 house, the perfect one for her, but it was her first one. And she works for the government in DC. Perfect house on a cul-de-sac, just exactly her dream home. But there were leaves in the gutters. And she refused to buy it because of that. Her agent couldn't help her understand that that was going to be every house that she wanted, because she wanted to live in the woods, was going to have that. So this was going to happen again. And all we could hope was that at the next house, something clicked with her, that she was able to see that you just hire somebody to clean the gutters, that it was okay. So, so I'm not saying that all of this will eliminate every problem. I'm saying that managing expectations at least gets you closer to getting people to buying the house they fell in love with. This is like what we were talking about at the beginning when I said we're investigating, we're following clues. If outside I see this, I think you can see my cursor, this picture in the upper left-hand corner, where there's the water, the downspout is just discharging right against the foundation. You can expect it to look like it does on the right-hand side there when you get inside. Or you can expect it to smell musty when you go down into the basement. And all that needs to be done is to extend the downspouts with these extenders. And they're cheap. They have them at Home Depot and Lowe's in multiple colors, and they're like $15. So these simple way to save your basement. So and this is, you just see it. Even if it's dry, if because in August, usually we're very dry and we can't see that there's water there, but there will be a divot there. There will be an empty space, a void where that water has gone in every time it rains. You see that and think, okay, let me see what it's going to be like in the basement. You go in the basement and you don't need to say anything, because your buyer is going to say it if they smell something. It smells musty down here or whatever, but you know where to go to look. Let me just go to the corner and take a look, and yep. Okay, that's probably from this. And most of the time, just extending that downspout will eliminate that problem. And then you can clear what appears to be mold growth there, potential fungal growth. You can clear that out. And I do a whole mold class that gives you phraseology, verbiage to use with people so that to help them understand mold and how to get rid of it and why it doesn't have to be so scary. Cleaning out the window wells and putting a cover over it. So this one at the top has a window well cover, which is great. Another really cheap fix that you can get from any home improvement store or Walmart probably is these window well covers, and you can get them as fancy as you want, and they could just be plain plastic, or they could be glass or plexiglass, whatever. Then the bottom one is showing you a window well that has a vent for the crawl space. So that's what that little circle is. Most of the time, the window well is there to keep water and debris from getting in and building up against the window. But in this case, they've done it to make sure that they can still have the expected airflow into the crawl space. And that's important because, and you'll find that there are mixed views about whether crawl spaces should be vented or not vented. And the final answer on that is it depends on how the HVAC system was designed, because the crawl space and its venting tie all the way through to the rest of the house and to the attic. So when you're thinking of that, it all goes together. If there are vents there and they're covered, your inspector may say to uncover them. It all depends. Each situation's a little bit different and there's no hard, fast rule. Which I wish there were. Okay, so here we are with the changing the filter. So change the filter in your furnace. This is something that your inspector should be teaching your buyers how to do. The filter on the right-hand side is not, it's filtered a lot. It's ready to be replaced. One thing that you can do when you're listing a property to make it look really good for a home inspector is have a box of filters and have them labeled on top. Have them each month of the year, starting with the month of that home inspection. So that, or the month after the home inspection. So it's clear that you're prepared and you change these out monthly. That's what we will infer if you do that. And just get them on Amazon, and you don't need the most expensive. Those cause your system to have to work harder, and they last a shorter period of time. So get a medium grade filter and change it every month. And put the dates on them so that they're there, and then we'll think that you change them every month, and that shows us that you're maintaining this property. Another thing that you could do that your buyer can be doing as maintenance is checking for leaks at the hose bibs, at the kitchen sink, under the toilet. That teal colored stuff behind that toilet is where the toilet leaked, and they had some of the, I don't know, one of those Clorox things in the tank. And so it leaked and we could see it there. Just want your buyers to be aware of these things, and they can handle them how they handle them. They don't have to wait for a landlord to do it or get frustrated about that. They can do it as they want to on their own time frame. Also, caulking around the shower and caulking around windows. Pretty common issue. It's caulk. It's not designed to last forever. And grout between, I don't have a picture of grout in here, do I? The grout between tiles that needs to be replaced. If it's got holes in it or if it's deteriorating, get rid of it and add more. It can be very satisfying to re-caulk and to remove old caulk. Also clear out the basement walkout drains. So this was at a house that we did a couple of months ago here. The basement walkout drain was covered. This is what it would look like here. If that's full of garbage or leaves or anything, the water can't go down the drain. And where's it going to go? Well, I could tell you because my husband just told me that while I was out of town this week that our basement flooded because there was some buildup in the drain. And we're both very careful about that. And something got on there and we didn't notice. So it's important to just, my basement's not finished and I have asbestos tiles on the floor, which stand up to anything. So you don't like, it's not a horrible thing for me because it's unfinished area, but you don't want water coming in. And asbestos tiles don't have to be a worry. That's a whole other class too. Any questions about that? I think this is a pretty common one that most people see and most home inspectors are saying, put a cover on it, put something on it, keep it clear. Oh, Kathy, remember that one?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I just remembered that one. Kathy and I had one where oh my gosh, that just came.
We went there and it was flooded, yeah.
Yeah, and the power went out and
Mm-hmm.
and
And me
we
and you were
shut-
cleaning.
Yes, we were just basically shoveling that water back out, and then some down into the sump pump, but some out. A sump pump is not required in a house, by the way. If there's never been a water problem and everything's dry, a sump pump is not something that you have to have.
Hey,
However,
Rachel,
yes,
I would
Robert.
like to say also that that photo in the northeast corner should be
Mhm.
notated as a trip hazard, just to be on the safe side.
Oh, yes, you mean the falling over into the, like nothing around the,
Yeah, somebody could trip and fall on that.
yep, you're absolutely right.
I'm just teasing you.
But you're right. If you fall and you land in the beautiful pile of garbage, and underneath that was actually a sump pump. And so when the inspector moved some of the trash, he fell into the sump pump. Fortunately, he didn't break his ankle or anything, but that was a challenge. And the photographer had gotten in there a week before to do pictures, and this had just refilled. So, but yes, it's a trip hazard for real. Like if the one on the bottom right corner did not have that railing, it would be really dangerous. Anyway,
Maybe the inspector should start wearing safety helmets or something. That would be a good idea.
helmets, and I was thinking waders, like the wader, like fly fisher people wear. That was a challenging thing. And there's needles and other stuff, so you don't want to put your hands down there and move stuff. So it's important, especially if you have a listing that's vacant, to keep that clear. You've got to be thinking about that, because you don't know if the basement's you don't know what's going to push it over the edge. Sump pump is not required in a house, unless you've determined at some point that it needs one, because there's a leak, there's some kind of a there's water coming in, there's a lot of groundwater outside the house. That is when you would be having a sump pump in. I've had people concerned that there was a sump pump, like, I don't want a house with a sump pump. Obviously, there's a water problem. That sump pump is some crock and pump inside of it are actually signs that some work has been done to, if it works, to take care of the house and handle those situations. If you don't have a sump crock and a sump pump, and you'll see this if you're ever on a mock inspection with me in Howard County, you'll see this. There's a sump pump there, and I'll show you how to test it, but it doesn't ever run, but the basement's dry. There's no evidence of water anywhere. And so in that case, I'm less concerned about needing a sump pump. My house has never had a sump pump, 1957, and it's flooded. That's the second time in the 9 years that I've lived here. So it could have a sump pump, but it doesn't really need one. It really needs we need to keep that drain clear. Okay, also replacing damaged little pieces of drywall that are damaged, or putting covers on switch plates and light switch covers. You've got those are things that home buyers should do themselves, making it their own. I had someone complain about door stoppers being missing, that they needed those, and that's something that your buyer can do that. And if a seller wants to do it, well, we're not going to stop them, of course, but really having a buyer not ask for that kind of thing makes the most sense. If you these are things about welcome to home ownership. GFCI receptacle that I was talking about that you wouldn't see in an unrenovated 1950 house is like this one on the left, just in case you weren't sure what I was talking about with the GFCIs. When you're working with sellers, those are designed to be tested monthly. So if you've got sellers, you want to make sure that those work before you have a home inspection, because sometimes a home inspector will come in and trip that for the first time in 20 years, and it's never tripped before, and then it might not reset. So they really are designed to be tested monthly. Some other items that a lot of buyers look for or want to know more about is, and we've got 4 minutes, so I'm just gonna get these in really quickly, but I have classes about each of these coming up, so you don't have to get into it too much. But sewer scope, almost every house should have it, because there can be roots that get into pipes this is a sewer line going out of the house. The other thing that a lot of people don't think about is a house maybe getting an in-ground pool put in the back, or getting a patio board. The truck pulling on the front yard can actually cause the pipes to crack in that main sewer line. And the homeowner is responsible for the house, the line from the house to the street. Baltimore City and Baltimore County offer a warranty for that, and it's really cheap, and it's just something to keep in mind. Chimney inspection should be done generally every year. If the chimney's not used at all, then just use it or have a chimney inspection before you use it again. WDI or termite inspection, and each of these can save so much money. The sewer scope one could save $5,000 to $10,000, chimney $25,000. We do the chimney inspection because we found that we do all of these inspections because we found that there are so many people who do these inspections, but then have a conflict of interest because they offer the repairs and services. So we offer these so that you can get an unbiased view of what's happening. We don't do any repairs. So here's the information. Now you could take what we've given you and give it to chimney people and have them give you an estimate. And most chimney inspection companies will, because our report is so detail heavy and we've got lots of information and photos so that we know what they need. They've told us what they need in their chimney inspection reports to be able to give you a relatively accurate quote. WDI or termite inspection, super important. Even if the lender doesn't require it, we recommend it, and then also recommend having a treatment plan so that someone comes out annually, and then we'll accept responsibility if a problem does develop. Sean?
Is radon a common occurrence up here to where it needs to be addressed?
Yep. So we're gonna get there in just a second. Mold is another, hang on one second, because I'm just
Thanks.
getting there. The mold is something, high humidity or a leak, stop the leak. It can be cleaned up, but we can't say it's mold. So then therefore you can't ask for it to be mold to be remediated until that's done, like until you actually know that it's mold. So testing happens there. Asbestos, we point that out, what might be asbestos, but you don't want to damage it to test it. And in most cases, you do have to damage it to test it. Just the best thing to do is to encapsulate it, to cover it. If it's on the exterior of the home, or, you know, if it's the shingles, asbestos shingles, or if it is pipe insulation, it's a great product. It's when it's damaged that it's a problem. In my basement, if I ever decide to cover it, to get rid of it, I'll just cover it. I won't do anything else. Radon and termite are the most commonly requested services from buyers. Radon, any house that touches dirt can have high levels of radon. So, and if you need any of these explained to your clients, I'm happy to explain them without scaring them. So what radon is, a colorless, odorless, tasteless gas. It's from the breakdown of uranium. It can be anywhere. So a house with a basement, a house just on a slab can have high levels of radon. And it's the leading cause of lung cancer death among non-smokers. And it's easy to lower the levels, less than $1,500 usually, to put in a mitigation system. And some houses in a neighborhood, you drive through a neighborhood and see some houses have mitigation systems on the outside. That is one way to know that there are high levels, but you can't use that as a determining factor of whether you test or not, because it can be anywhere. In Baltimore City, you don't see as many houses with it. And yet my employee who lives in Hamden has it, and he lives in a row house, and 4 of his neighbors have it. I rented a townhouse, a piggyback townhouse in Columbia, Goose Landing Circle, that was over by Chick-fil-A off of 100. In that property, this was 3 levels all above ground on a slab. And I had very small, low amounts of radon, and my next door neighbor had to mitigate because they had elevated levels. You want the number to be 3.9 or lower picocuries per liter. And you want it, but if it's at 5, you want to get it low. You want to get it back down. And most mitigation companies are aiming to get it below 2. And I've had it as high as 384 in Silver Spring, at a property in Silver Spring that had a walkout, and it was a split foyer with a full walkout basement. And they got it down with one system. They put it in and it was fine, below 2. After a mitigation system goes in, you wait 24 hours or so, and then you can test, and then it will have come down. And if you need more than one system, they'll put that in. My parents' house was 14, and they need a system at the front and back of their house. And it was a walkout basement with full-size windows, but their offices were down there. And this was over by the hospital in Howard County. You can't count on it not being somewhere or being somewhere. I don't have it in my house now where I live, and my neighbors do behind us. We've inspected a lot of houses in my neighborhood in Hunting Ridge. So that's that. Did I answer your question, Sean?
Oh, yes, for sure. Thank
Okay.
you. And ignore my other comment about other classes. That was some forms classes I've got scheduled.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
So